B2B is a global research partnership by of University of Waterloo in active support from our partners, Dried Fish Matters, TBTI, IIT Kharagpur, Shifri, and various government organizations who across the country who are the part of this entire process uh, are organizing this webinar on the occasion of World Fishery Day, which is one day to go. So I'll take this opportunity to welcome all of you to this webinar. Actually, there is some background noise, echo.
If we can request everyone to please mute yourself, we are having a lot of background noise. Please mute yourself.
Yeah. And we are having echo as well. Okay. So why this echo sound? It's because of the live streaming?
No, I think someone's mic is unmuted.
Please mute your mics. Mic. Yeah. Yeah. Sorry. Sir, I welcome all of you once again. So I take this opportunity to introduce the eminent panelists we have today with us. Brilliant panel, very, very distinguished scholars from across the world. And they have agreed in a very short time. We started, actually, we thought of organizing this workshop a month ago. But due to some unfortunate circumstances, we could not finalize it till the last moment. So, but we just communicated in about a week ago, and many brilliant scholars, they have agreed to grace this occasion and be with us and talk on this critical aspects of various aspects of viability of fisheries across the world especially during this time of pandemic. So we are fortunate to have a kind of very distinguished people. We have Sri Smriti Ranjan Pradhan sir, who is an Indian Administrative Officer, IAS, Administrative Service Officer, and he is the Director of Fisheries and Government of Orissa, and he has shown exemplary leadership during this challenging period of COVID, where the supply chain is fragmented. There are enormous challenges for these poor fishers in the state, and he has taken stand with the poor fishers and taking up a lot of initiative at the state level, that this challenge is ably made by and handled by these poor fishers. So I welcome you, sir, to this, and he has an exemplary bureaucratic career and served in many important positions in government of Odisha. He has demonstrated very strong leadership in in actually shaping livelihoods of poor. I personally know him since many years. So, sir, welcome to this panel, and we look forward to listen to you. We have Sri Pradeep Kumar Naik, who is the director of B2B program, and he's an associate professor with the University of Waterloo. He is a very engaged scholar working on the issues of social ecological systems in the fisheries across the world, and he has a strong development as well as academic career to his credit. We have Dr. Basant Kumar Das, no need to introduction. He is the director of SIFRI and Central Inland Fisheries Research Institute, Barakpur. Dr. Das is an eminent fisheries scientist, and everyone knows in the fishery sector to him. He has about more than 377 scientific publications to his credit. So that shows him passion and enthusiasm in the field, and he's an able administrator as well. We have Professor Derek Johnson, an associate professor in the Department of Anthropology, the University of Manitoba. Derek's primary broad area of research is political ecology of small-scale fisheries and governance. He is the program director of Dried Fish Matters, a global research partnership focusing on the intersection between political ecology and social economy and the social economy of dried fish in South and Southeast Asia. We are welcome, Derek. We are also very, very fortunate to have Derek Armitage. He's the professor in the School of Environment, Resources and Sustainability of University of Waterloo, Canada. He also leads a research group, Environment Change and Governance Group. His research interests center on the human dimensions of environment change and the formation of adaptive multi-level governance systems. And he works on numerous projects in Southeast Asia, Canada, North and Caribbean. And you just Google the name, we'll find the kind of work he's engaged. We are also equally very, very fortunate to have Ratana Chen Pagdi. Ratana is a professor in Memorial University, Canada, and currently leading a major global research partnership to IGNOR. It aims at elevating the profile of small-scale fisheries and rectifying their marginalization in national and international scale politics. She is a transdisciplinary scholar, and she has been instrumental in developing the application of interactive governance theory and in the world. And his contributions, his contribution is like enormous in the academic as well as the practice sphere of fisheries. We have Professor Priyadarshi Patnaik with us. He is also a well-known social scientist. He is the director of Center for Happiness in Indian Institute of Kharagpur. He is a professor in humanities. Dr. Patnaik's research explores Indian aesthetics, visual, multimedia, communications, music perceptions, aesthetics, and he will speak on well-being issues today with us. And he has more than 40 public journal papers and 15 books to his credit. We look forward to Professor Patnaik, to your talk. Will definitely hold the world student as well as the global practitioner community will definitely benefit from your talk on the well-being and poor fishes. Last but not the least, we have Dr. Jania Mukherjee. Dr. Jania Mukherjee is the assistant professor at the Department of Humanities and Social Sciences, Indian Institute of Technology, Kharagpur. Her research interest spans across environmental humanities, water political ecology, urban ecology, and developmental studies. She had published 3 books recently and several active articles and book chapters. And I think from this introduction, you all will actually visualize what kind of a panel we have today and what is that we are going to listen in next 2.5 hours. We are also fortunate to have the consent of the Minister, Honorable Minister, Animal Husbandry, Dairies, Fisheries, and MSME, Union Government of India. Due to some unavoidable circumstances, he has to attend a meeting at 5 p.m. with the PMO, but he agreed to give his address. He addressed some of us 30 minutes earlier, 4:30 to 5. We have recorded his speech, and we will now play his speech and his interactions with the audience about 5 minutes ago. So I request Sima to play the speech of Honorable Minister. Inaugural address, sir.
Namaskar. I congratulate you all for having given me this opportunity to share my ideas with you. I thank you from the bottom of my heart for this noble initiative. The subject is very vast, the time is short, and my knowledge in the subject is quite limited. And I have also another webinar just after this. So I may not be able to do justice the topic, but it's a very interesting topic. I take courses for this. Courses otherwise means attempt, prayatna. Or in our Shastra it is said that nothing is impossible by prayatna. Koshi is a development.
Sir, you are muted. Yes, sir.
And we should attach importance on development organization like COSIS, which takes initiatives to promote education, entrepreneurship, and safeguarding our environment. We don't need development at the cost of the frailty and unreasonable and biodiversity has been completely devastated. And during this corona, we get a great lesson that natural and love with Japan. So man is the greatest destroyer of this biodiversity, which is quite essential. The miscommunication came out of thoughts based on the thoughts of Charles Darwin. In his original thesis, Charles Darwin found that there is always struggle, fight in the world, everywhere struggle, and the inevitable result is the struggle for existence is the survival of the fittest. But in the context of Indian culture, we don't believe this. Although apparently there is struggle, inside there is complete harmony. You see the waves on the surface of the sea, but in the bottom it is very calm. Plants discharge oxygen, which is essential for our survival. And we discharge carbon dioxide, which plants digest. Otherwise, the world will be bound to essence. So thus we are connected with the entire creation. We cannot go on, we cannot base our entire civilization on struggle and fighting. So it is said that man is a part of the family, family is a part of the nation, nation is a part of the world, world is a part of the universe, universe is a part of this Prakriti, and Prakriti is the manifestation, is the shadow of Brahman. So from the lowest atom to the highest Brahman, everything is interrelated. And I cannot hurt you. So it is very natural that this oneness of the universe prompts us to go a further concept that is not only development but sustainable development, harmonious growth. And that is what is quite essential. So all our plannings, our preparation of roadmaps should aim at that. And for that, proper education is essential. Education of fish farmers, education of fishers, education of fish sailors, exporters, everybody else. We should have a scientific frame of mind, and in a scientific manner also, our production of fish and our business should continue. The first vulnerability is lack of education. Lack of education makes the fish farmer, the businessman vulnerable, and they suffer loss. So they need proper orientation and to save them from use losses due to unscientific farming. So we should have a clear vision. Mission should be fixed and action should be accordingly directed. There should be a proper roadmap. The ambitious project, ambitious scheme announced by our Honorable Prime Minister is the Pradhan Mantri Matsya Sampada Yojana. It's an umbrella having two sectors. One is central scheme, centrally funded scheme, and another is centrally sponsored scheme. That again, that is further segregated into non-beneficiary oriented scheme and beneficiary oriented scheme. The key implementation strategy is charter, cluster, or area-based approaches. Unless we develop clusters, it is very difficult to reach the goal that we have fixed. Eco park with forward and backward linkages is quite essential, and we should focus on the gaps to be filled. Convergence with the different departments and ministries is also essential, and we can draw different resources from agriculture, social justice, and other departments, food processing, and we can converge into a unified system of development. There should be end-to-end solution, and technology infusion should be given due importance. Productive utilization of land and water is very important, and reduction of good aquaculture practices. Traceability from catch to consumer will be a very beautiful idea, and I am sure that we can energize our fish farmers, our fishers, our entrepreneurs through all these schemes and through proper orientation. Government has announced a very ambitious scheme, that is Pradhan Mantri Matsya Sampada Yojana. Under this scheme, there are many scopes for the entrepreneurs. We can provide SLG groups many facilities also, entrepreneurs, and we can have farmer producer organizations. There is enough scope of farmer which can bind more than 500 or 1,000 farmers in one group. 1,500, 200 farmers can be united into clusters. In clusters, we can have brackish water culture, mariculture, inland fish culture, RSS, cage culture, ornamental fish culture, parl culture, fish feed plants, hatcheries, and lavatories also. For all these projects, government announced 40% subsidy for male entrepreneurs of general caste and 60% subsidy for female entrepreneurs and both entrepreneurs from SC and ST category. This is a very handsome and alluring package of subsidies. Besides that, for mechanization of boats, modernization of boats, deep sea vessel, government is providing the same percent of subsidy. There are two types of lavatories to come up. One is a static lavatory, where the lavatory will be set up, 25 lakhs is the cost, out of which 40% or 60%, as the case may be, will be given to the end. And similarly, a mobile lavatory is arranged, where the lavatory will fix to a truck, it will move from village to village, and people gather and will have tests of their soil, water, fish, and the quality standard of the fish feed, everything else can be tested there, and reports be given within a short time. A reasonable fees may be given to the entrepreneur, so that you will get a good earning, and people get the benefit at their doorstep. Besides that, there is integrated fish farming villages, where 7.5 crores will be spent a year, and nearly 100 villages will be taken off this year, and likewise every year 100 and 200 villages will be taken, coastal villages mostly, and they are an all-round development of the villages, villagers, their children will be taken up, so far as education, health, hygiene, atmosphere, and employment is concerned. So this will be integrated fish farming. So there should be a connector, and you people can play the role of this connector, which is very, very important. Connector of the beneficiary to the government schemes, the government packages, because due to the lack of their knowledge and experience, they could not connect themselves. And there is bureaucratic bottleneck also. So since they are not aware of the benefit of these schemes, they will not be able to extract the profit. So it is said that knowledge is power. And you people, so brilliant young men, young entrepreneurs and moderators, you can play this role of connecting the people to government schemes. And all the schematic projects should be aimed at the development of our rural posts. Mahatma Gandhi used to say that not mass production, but production by masses is the solution to our economic problems. So now this is quite important that our rural people, every house should be an enterprise, and every people should be an entrepreneur. There are also a provision of processing units so that people can prepare different items like pickles and all that from trees, and they can get the same % of subsidy. There is another scheme of interest subvention. Suppose somebody wants to start a big project, and for that project, he can have an interest subvention up to 3%. Likewise, world-class fish markets are to be established by government, and many other things are being done. So this way we can improve the standard of living of our people, because that is our main goal. Improvement of the standard of living of our poor fish farmers, that is most important. And fishery development and management plan, innovation is given due importance to, and 1.25 crore is given as an aid to such projects for new innovations. Innovative ideas are to be cultivated. Model integrated coastal fishing villages paves the way for the development of rural posts. Species diversification and genetic improvement is also given due importance. Comprehensive fisheries and database and different all the subsidy-based schemes I have mentioned are very important. Fisheries management regulatory framework is also quite essential. Earlier, there was no such integrated regulation for the whole country. Every state had their own laws, but the states have a right up to 12 nautical miles from the beach in the sea. From 12 nautical miles up to 200 nautical miles, it is the central government who is to make laws, regulations, and execute different plans. But due to the absence of such a comprehensive law, sometimes outsiders, foreign players exploit our marine resources in deep sea, and now it has been completely prohibited. No outsiders are allowed to fishing in these areas. So deep sea vessel is quite essential, and our deep sea vessels are being prepared. Hundreds of deep sea vessels is prepared and given to Indian players only, Indian businessmen, and either individually or through cooperatives, they are doing all these businesses. And since in the outer sea, it is the fish resources are very limited nowadays. They're limited day by day. So deep sea exploration will be very productive, and it will give more revenue. That's why government has also announced subsidy up to 40% and 60% in the yearly model. So many fisheries colleges are coming up nowadays to provide education, training to our new entrepreneurs. And I think this courses will have a very meaningful way, a very meaningful methodology to connect our people to all these common metrics. And it creates a sense of confidence among them. Self-trust is the secret of success, it is said. And people are ready to give 2 lakh rupees as bribe to find out a very rural reputation in a job. But many people should be infused among them, and this role can be played by courses. I again appreciate your noble endeavor, and I congratulate you all. I offer you my heartfelt thanks for this attempt, and I believe that through your noble attempt, through the noble endeavor of people and organizations like you, we can have a revolutionary change in this field, and the standard of living of our fish farmers will be raised, and they can get all the benefits that is declared by the government, and they can prosper, they can create history, and there shall be economic revolution, and we shall march ahead to reach the great goal announced by our honorable Prime Minister Shriman Narendra Modi ji, to reach $5 trillion economy. With this I conclude.
Thanks, Sima. Hello. Yeah.
So, yeah.
Thanks, Sima. So may I request Sri Smritiranjan Pradhan sir to give his to share his views on this issue. Sri Pradhan sir is the Director of Fisheries, Government of Odisha. May I request him to?
Sisi,
Yes.
sorry to
Thank
interfere
you,
there.
Mr. Sisir Pradhan. Sorry, go ahead.
I'm just asking everyone to mute, please, because there is a lot of background noise. Please mute yourself.
Is it possible, Sima, to mute everyone other than the speaker from our side?
Yeah, I have done that, but just
She
everyone.
can mute everyone, then I can unmute from my
People
side.
keep unmuting themselves, so yeah.
Please mute. Please mute everyone. Please mute. Otherwise, we'll have to remove whoever is doing this again and again. We'll have to remove the participation. Otherwise, it is disturbing to everyone. So it's a polite request. Please mute everyone other than the speaker. Whole world is listening. So it would be very disturbing for this. Please mute. Sir, please. I request you.
Thank you, Mr. Sisir Pradhan, organizers, and very humble initiative from KOSIS. I see many known faces here. Either they worked with me in my previous capacity, or they're known to me somehow or the other. It's a very challenging topic. Today we're discussing opportunities and challenges for viability in small-scale fisheries and fisheries value chain. One disclaimer, whatever I speak here, it is my personal view. It will not be considered the view of the government of Odisha or the Directorate of Fisheries of Odisha. So I'm new to the sector. I joined just before this pandemic on 24th of February this year. And the lockdown started exactly a month after, probably on 23rd of March. So I have very limited exposure to this sector as of now. Only I have been monitoring through this kind of webinars and virtual meetings. But nevertheless, I want to inform the August House that my state has been recognized by the Government of India as the best performing marine state in the country. And one of my districts, that is Kalahandi district, has been recognized by Government of India as the best performing inland fisheries district in the country. So Government of India is going to give us the awards on 21st of this month, exactly 2 days after this. And my secretary is going to receive those awards. This is for information only. So let us get into the serious business. Whatever I want to speak, I'll speak about the state and the opportunities for the rural poor fishers in the sector. So basically, the sector in Odisha is categorized by marine fishery and inland fisheries, because we have almost 480 kilometers of coastline, Bay of Bengal. And under inland fisheries, there are two categories again, the freshwater and the brackish water. A little bit background about Odisha's fish production status. We are the 5th largest fish producing state in the country, with around little more than 800,000 metric ton fish production in the year 1990 and 20. The value could be around $2 billion US, and we contribute around 3% to the state GDP. This is the background to just to set this tone for the discussion. And the fisheries sector in the state has grown by 11% CAGR, and particularly the inland fisheries sector has grown by 14% of the CAGR annually. So we have two very good policies in place. We work within the ambit of these two policies. One is the Odisha Fishery Policy 2015, and another is the Reservoir Fishery Policies 2012. We have been asked to work within these policies to give a facelift to especially the inland fishery sector in the state. We also intend to move out from the capture fishery to culture fisheries, to capture to pisciculture rather. There is a reason behind it. I'll just describe those things subsequently. Odisha has a unique advantage that almost 90% of our population consume fish, bearing few days, Monday, Tuesday, something like that, for some religious reason. Otherwise, most of our population, they consume fish. So out of 4.5 crore, around 45 million population, so around 4 million population, they consume fish. So we are not only producing fish, but we also consume the fish. Our fish consumption per annum is around 16 kg, which is 1.5 times, roughly 1.5 times of the national average. But we can increase this availability and consumption of fish to say around 20 kg per annum. Our neighboring state, West Bengal, is way ahead as far as per capita annual consumption of fishery. I think they're little more than 20 kg per annum. So we'd like to reach to that level for availability as well as for consumption. Though we produce, we culture and we capture fish, but we are still a net importer of fish. Say around 50,000 metric ton per year, we import fish from our neighboring states. So first target of the state is to bridge this gap, to make the state self-sufficient as far as fish production is concerned. And target 2 could be to enhance the productivity. Right now we are around 4.5 ton per hectare our productivity. We'd like to increase it to around 9 to 10 ton per hectare, so that there is availability of fish as well as the price, so that the poor persons can also afford to procure fish and consume fish. So this is a clear supply and demand thing, so that we want to bridge. We have around 1.5 million, that is around 15 lakh fisher population in the state as per our record, out of which 600,000 are marine fishers, 7,000, little more than 7,000 are inland fishers, and we have one of the largest brackish water lake in the country, that is Chilka. So around 150,000 fisher population depend on Chilka Lake. So this is the broad scenario of where are we, what are the scope for our state. The freshwater fishery resources of the state stands at around 684,000 hectares, including 200,000 hectares of reservoir and minor or medium irrigation projects. So we want to take advantage of this especially 2,000 hectares of reservoir and minor irrigation projects, wherein we want to develop the cage culture. I'll come to that later, but this is a point I would like to flag at this point of time. We have brackish water resources around 418,000 hectares, including 79,000 hectares of Chilka Lake, which is also a Ramsar conversion site as per the UNESCO. As per the UNESCO. Here I would like to flag the marine. Sorry, sir. Sorry, there are some disturbances. Can I request you to please mute yourself?
You're muted.
Okay. I unmute myself. Okay. As per the report of 2017-18 from Fisheries Survey of India, Odisha has a marine fishery potential at the MSY level. MSY means maximum sustainable yield of 2.89 lakh metric tons, wherein we capture around 1.5 lakh metric ton per year as far as marine fishing is concerned. And this 1.5 lakh metric ton figure is stagnant over a period of 2 decades. So we have a scope to go till almost 3 lakh metric ton, as the maximum sustainable yield is almost 3 lakh metric ton. So there is a huge gap of 1.4 lakh metric ton as far as marine fishery is concerned. And we operate to 22,000 fishing vessels from 73 different either fish landing centers or fishing harbors. And most of our fishing fleets are traditional in nature. They are not mechanized. Some of them are motorized boats, but they are not mechanized. And here I'm flagging the point where the participation of poor fishers can come in. That though we are not exploring to the fullest level of marine fisheries, but at the same time, we have not encouraged deep sea fishing vessels. We have not encouraged mechanized fishing vessels, which are mostly owned by either medium or rich people, well-off fishermen, big investors. So by this way, knowingly or otherwise, we have been promoting poor fishers in this sector, especially in the Chilka Lake as well as marine fisheries. We have only, out of these 22,000 fishing vessels, we have only 1,760 mechanized fishing vessels, and rest all vessels are traditional vessels, traditional boats. And we have not renewed or registered any mechanized fishing vessels in last 10 years. I do not know if it's good or bad, but this has created an ample opportunity for the poor fishers in the state to take up the job of fishing either in the sea or in the Chilka Lake as a profession, and to sustain their livelihoods. So probably this is one of the things I would have flagged anyway. I flagged this point. Coming to inland fisheries, this is the only avenue for increasing the fish production in the state. We can also increase the fish capture in the marine also, because as I explained, there is a gap of 1.4 lakh metric ton to reach that maximum sustainable yield. But we are consciously shifting ourselves from capture fisheries to culture. So that is why presently the state government attention is to focus increase in fish production in the state, especially inland fisheries, through vertical expansion and intensification of fish farming. We have taken up a holistic value chain approach to develop the inland fisheries. First, on the bottom of the value chain, I think the quality fish seed production through hatchery accreditation and seed certification. This one we are going to take up this year. We have a master plan for the next 5 years. Just to give an example, we need around little more than 600 crore spawn at this point of time. But the government hatcheries as well as the private hatcheries put together grow around 300 crore spawn. So balance 300 crore or little less than 300 crore spawn we get from outside state, our neighboring state, especially from West Bengal. Not to mention the quality of that, but we don't get the spawn in time because we don't have round the year breeding program in the state. Very recently, we have started the early breeding program in the state just to bridge this gap. Also, the poor fishers can chip in, they can raise fingerling. We have a program in place for that also. Honorable Union Minister explained about the Prime Minister Matsya Sampad Yojana in detail. I am not going into that, but we have a program in place to encourage that also, wherein the poor fishers can chip in, can also rear fingerlings required for the state.
Sorry, sir, just to let you know, I have 2 more minutes to wrap up your presentation.
Okay. I'm so sorry. I'm a bit late. Huh? Usually we don't present, we don't speak. Okay, this is all about our sector. We also promote women SHGs, women self-help group through a scheme under the sector. We have around 65,000 Gram Panchayat tanks, and as of now, we have covered 4,000 Gram Panchayat tanks through a scheme wherein the women SHGs can also culture, they can take up pisciculture in a scientific way. We also provide them extensive services. So this is one initiative wherein the poor fishers are also chipping in. We also promote intensive pisciculture through biofloc. It may not be a very convenient, very comfortable thing for the poor fishers, but nevertheless, we have started promoting biofloc from this year onwards under the state scheme as well as Pradhan Mantri Matsya Sampad Yojana. So these are the few major initiatives that we have taken in the state. As far as value chain is concerned, we are keen to establish the dry fish and hygienic way production of dry fish and to market it. And World Fish, a CHR organization, is supporting us, and probably they are also tied up with the
The network issue, what happened?
I think we lost him.
Yeah, I think we lost him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you move on to the next speaker then?
Yeah, we can. So thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Probably we lost you in between. We'll definitely be in touch with you. Now, may I request Derek Hermitage for his intervention. And Derek is a kind of, I say, distinguished scholar in governance, and he has a lot of experience in Southeast Asia as well as entire world about fisheries governance. I would request him to take over.
All right, Sahir, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Thank you for all the hard work organizing this. It's great to be here. I do have a screen I can try and share, if that's possible. Tamar, you just need to give me permission to share my screen.
Yeah, see what.
Okay. Do you see the slide?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So thank you again. Appreciate the opportunity to be here. I was asked to say a few words about the idea of resilience and well-being in fisheries governance. And resilience is really one framework or tool to help understand small-scale fisheries. In that way, it's could be a general framework to help us make decisions about things like allocation or where and how to increase productivity in a fishery. Perhaps when and where to protect certain resource stocks and so on. And so what I thought I would do is just spend a few moments maybe providing a brief example of a small scale fishery from Vietnam, in a different part of the world where I've worked, and then offer a few insights on some core ideas of resilience that can help us think about these questions and how we might analyze and understand a small scale fishery system. And then link that to some governance implications. In other words, if we want to try and build resilience, what does that look like from a governance perspective? So this is, I'll take us to the Tam Giang Lagoon in Vietnam. And start perhaps with a bit of a story there or an example. This is a very large brackish water lagoon system of about 75 kilometers long. It's very diverse, very rich. In fact, it has a number of different openings to the sea. And so in fact, it's almost like 3 lagoon systems in one. But it's one where there's been very intense exploitation. There's a lot of livelihood conflict, a lot of conflict over different gear types. In fact, there are some 30 or more different types of fixed gear and mobile gear that fishers use in order to access resources. Fixed gear like net enclosures and aquaculture ponds, as well as mobile gear of a whole range of mobile gear fisheries and nets and things like that. And so, yeah, we have a great deal of conflict in this particular lagoon system, an increasing amount of conflict over the years because of the growing use of the resource. In part, that's because there has been rather unclear property rights. So who gets access to the lagoon and when and where? There's been a shift from more collective types of property right systems to more de facto individual or private types of property as net enclosures and aquaculture ponds have been developed over time. And that's in response to some government policy as well. Of course, there's also other processes of change taking place, climate change related sea level rise, increasing intensity of storms. There's just recently very, very severe flooding and storms have hit this coast in Vietnam. So a very challenging context for small scale fishers. And I just would note that there's a number of other researchers that have been actively involved in trying to understand this particular lagoon system, this brackish water lagoon system. So, just as one example, and I know many people here will have many different examples from around the world and from places where they work, but how can we understand some of the conditions that are taking place here? How do we analyze and understand some of the opportunities to target some interventions that relate to access or to interventions that relate to productivity, whether that's for capture fisheries or for culture fisheries, both of which are taking place here in the lagoon system. And so I guess if we're thinking about that, the first thing to remember is that these are not ecological problems, or they're not just social and economic problems. They are social and they're linked social and ecological challenges or problems that we need to try and understand. And as the experience in the lagoon system, in the Tam Giang lagoon system shows, many of the growing uncertainties and the vulnerabilities that people are experiencing in that system can't simply be eliminated. Again, some have to do with changing climatic systems, some have to do with changing market demands, changing gear types that are coming in as well as people innovate and try and capture more stock. So there's many of these vulnerabilities and uncertainties can't be eliminated. And so we need to try and really shift our thinking and emphasize how do we then build the resilience and the capacity of the small scale fishing communities to respond to these changes. And so that really brings us to this idea of resilience. And so in this context, resilience really refers to the ability to absorb change, both social and ecological change, and to persist, and hopefully to absorb change and persist in a manner that is in a condition that is beneficial, that's positive, that leads to people's well-being, whether that's material well-being or their relational well-being or so on. And we can do that in order to reduce vulnerabilities and ultimately increase their viability by maintaining some of the diversity of the lagoon system, broadening their participation, decision-making processes, and so on. So this focus very much on absorbing and persisting in the context of all these changes is really about trying to avoid, and I think what we've seen in many different places, trying to avoid some dramatic shifts, some rapid changes in these systems that revolve crossing critical thresholds, going from one positive circumstance, or at least a condition in which people's material well-being is being met, to one in which it is not. And so resilience, one of the tools in resilience thinking, as we think about this ability to absorb change and persist, is this notion of a threshold. And so here, one of the helpful ways that we can think about the complexity of these small-scale fishery systems is using this notion of threshold. And that's really a boundary or a breakpoint between two alternate system states. One, again, where people may be better off and the small-scale fishing communities may be better off, to one where they are not. And if we can identify and understand where those thresholds are, then we can design our interventions to try and pull us back from those thresholds. And in fact, one of the ways that resilience is often defined is the distance to the threshold. So the closer we are to a threshold, the less resilient that system is. The farther away from that threshold, the more resilient that system is as well. And so, you know, sometimes these thresholds as well can be very rapid, and and irreversible. And so once we fall in from one system into another, it's very hard to get back to a place where people maybe were better off. And it results in very different social and ecological configurations. So in the Tamgang Lagoon, we've seen evidence, and that's what this diagram here shows, of particular points in time where the lagoon has crossed a bit of a threshold because of the introduction of intensive aquaculture, rapid increases in density. It's led to disease outbreaks, water quality declines, and a clear material shift in the quality of that lagoon system and what it means for people. And again, later on, the introduction of a trap, of a loot trap, a particular type of fishing gear, led to significant declines in resource productivity overall. So these thresholds are helpful in helping us understand these small-scale systems. I think it's important, though, as we're talking about resilience, to just make to distinguish between two types of resilience. And as we're thinking about efforts to adapt to changes and maintain or persist through time, we need to think about the idea not just of trying to bounce back from a disturbance. So if a flood happens, to bounce back to the same state, but to really think about, again, social and ecological forms of resilience where we're absorbing change and disturbance while maintaining system structure. And that's what these diagrams show. The social and ecological resilience concept is this idea that the system itself is trying to be maintained in a particular configuration where people's material and relational and even subjective well-being is maintained. And so it really reminds us then that how can we use different policy tools, different guidelines and blue economy initiatives in ways that actually help small-scale fishers buffer these ongoing shocks, whether those are environmental shocks or economic shocks, and their uncertainties, all while trying to maintain and improve their well-being.
Sorry, Derek, you have a minute to wrap up.
Okay, super. And so we have then the idea that we want to focus not just on particular gears or types of disturbances, but consider the whole social and ecological system. And that reminds us that we need to be thinking about resilience as a generalized concept, not just resilience of a particular gear, but resilience of the whole system. And again, if we're going to support efforts to maintain and build the resilience of small-scale fishing communities, we need to do that. So the last thing then is just to bring this to governance. And in the context of the Tamgang Lagoon and efforts to think about resilience and build opportunities for the resilience of these communities, it really does take us into the realm of governance and policy. And two of the strategies that have been most effective in supporting the resilience of small-scale fishing communities in the lagoon has really been the emergence of co-management networks. And over a number of years, have gone from 2 fishing associations at the local scale to well over 50 of these fishing associations with well over 5,000 members, working much more carefully with commune, district, and regional governments. The Honorable Minister at the introduction talked about connectors and the importance of connectors, and that's very much what co-management is. It's connecting small-scale fishing communities with decision makers and sharing some of that power and authority. And then the other thing that was really important in supporting efforts to build resilience in the lagoon was the use of allocating spatial use rights to those fishing associations. So giving much more power to individual fishing associations to make decisions about how the lagoon space would be used, how it would be shared between fixed gear and mobile gear fishers over time. And that's very much helped to reduce conflict. So it's just a small sampling of resilience as a framework to think about small-scale fishing communities. And again, appreciate the opportunity to be here. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'll stop sharing my screen.
Yeah, thanks, Derek. Thanks, such a wonderful intervention about fisheries. Thanks a lot for actually taking this time out from your busy schedule. You know you have back-to-back meetings. So
My pleasure.
thank you very much. Thank you very much. May I request Pradeep, Professor Pradeep Naik to talk on basically vulnerability, talk on these pathways of vulnerability to viability for small-scale fisheries. Thanks.
Yeah, I'm just trying to share my screen.
We can see the screen.
Can you see now? Okay. Thank you very much, Cecil, for leading this process, and also Derek coming in before me to talk about resilience and well-being. That makes my task easier. My purpose here today is to talk about both vulnerability and viability, and talk about them in a way that I can link the transition from vulnerability to viability using some of these concepts. So what I'm going to try is to talk about these two concepts, but also talk about possible pathways or roads to move from vulnerability to viability. What we are seeing today, is that there is manifold increase in the levels of vulnerabilities in the small-scale fishery communities around the world. Vulnerabilities that are not only material in nature, but vulnerability in all other spheres of small-scale fishers' lives and livelihoods and existence. So we are kind of worried about, this increase and multidimensional increase of vulnerabilities. But the question that we ask, especially in the circles of and projects that we work, we ask a critical question, that if these communities were only vulnerable over a historical period of time, they would have perished by now. So they are, yes, they are vulnerable, but at the same time, there is something in them which is inherent and that keeps them going. So we call them strengths. We're saying, despite being vulnerable, there are certain strengths in these communities that have helped them to survive, help them to respond to some of these emerging and existing vulnerabilities, and thereby they have continued until today. So the question is then, can we find out these strengths, understand them well, and then make some strategies and build capacities in these communities and work with these communities to help them move from the vulnerability situation to more becoming viable based on these trends. So this is a kind of an approach where we work. We call it a V2B approach, which is vulnerability to viability, and the pathway to that viability could be working more and more on the strengths that are inherent in these particular systems. How do we understand vulnerability and viability? I'm going to go back to what Derek Armitage was just speaking about. So the first concept that we look at in terms of understanding vulnerability and viability is resilience. So can we look at building resilience as a way to dealing with vulnerabilities? And of course, we all know that resilience is the capacity to withstand, the capacity to respond to adversities, the capacity to respond when you are met with different levels of vulnerability. So if that is a capacity, then can we understand vulnerability and therefore viability in terms of the levels of resilience in these small-scale fishing communities? So we can, in a simple term, we can say reduced levels of resilience can lead to, increasing levels of vulnerability and vice versa. Okay. The second concept that we use to understand vulnerability and viability in small-scale fisheries communities is resources or capitals. Any human life anywhere in the world would require certain kinds of resources, maybe purely material resources or non-material intangible resources to survive, to make plans, to respond to adversities, to respond to different levels of vulnerabilities. So in the literature, if you look at livelihood capitals, there are many different ways to define these capitals. So people talk about human, physical, natural, social, and financial capitals, but you can divide them into more material capitals or non-material capital. So social capital is something that can be relying on institutions, relationships, different levels of collaboration. So can be non-material in many ways, but at the same time, physical resources or physical capitals can be very material in nature. So the crux of the argument here is then, can we look at the levels of capitals and interaction of small-scale fishers with these capitals to understand their levels of vulnerabilities, their economic status, their social position, their cultural identity, ecological security, and political voice and decision-making power? All of these things would signify the level of capital and the way these people can interact to make the most out of it. The third one is well-being, which my previous speaker, Derek Armitage, has already spoken to. The beautiful thing about well-being is that it talks about a state of being of in this case, the small-scale fishing communities. So do people feel good? Do people feel well? And what is the state of feeling well? And this is seen in three different dimensions. One is, of course, the material. The second is the relational, and then the subjective dimensions. What this helps us to do is then to understand vulnerability in all of these three areas. So what do people have, what people can do with what they have, and how they feel about what they have and what they can do in relation to others. So these are all different dimensions of well-being that helps us to understand vulnerability or levels of vulnerability in material, relational, and subjective ways. So these are the three ways. There are many more ways, of course. So I bring these three different concepts to talk about vulnerability, and therefore less of these things in a fishing community would signify vulnerability, but more of these things might signify viability. And then this sets a kind of a momentum towards viability in communities where vulnerabilities are high in amount. how do we make a transition from vulnerability to viability? So I mean, this is a busy slide. I know I'm not going to talk to each one of them. I can direct you to a recent forthcoming paper where we explain this particular transition from vulnerability to viability. What I'm trying to show on this particular slide are different approaches that have been used in literature by different scholars and have been practiced by many practitioners to understand the state of small-scale fisheries. So if I can just touch upon a few of them, so people talk about how fish is for life, which signifies that in a small-scale fishing community, people depend on fish for their life and for their livelihoods. That goes anywhere from drawing nutritional values from the fish to having an income which then sustains their family. So fish for life is an approach which helps us to understand levels of vulnerability and viability. Fisheries rhymes with poverty, which then takes us to the structural and and other aspects of fishing communities and various dynamics that then tells us that fishers are always and often identified with poverty. Is that the case always? Can we make a transition from a poverty scenario or a vulnerable scenario to a more viable kind of scenario? And then touching upon all other kinds of dominant approaches to understand and or how small-scale fisheries have been explained. People talk about levels of identity, whether identity has been lost in fishing communities or not. Different kinds of encroachment and grabbing. We talk about coastal grabbing, ocean grabbing that is taking place, where fishers have lost their customary traditional fishing areas. Therefore, there is a dent on the livelihood. There is a dent on the very survival source of these fishing communities. Fishing for power, the levels of power that needs to define vulnerability and viability, and looking at fishing as a way of life. So many of these small-scale fishers that we often talk about in either vulnerable or viable situations see fishing as a way of life. Over an historical period of time, over multiple generations, these fishers have engaged in fishing only and nothing else. So fishing becomes a way of life because they engage in fishing to reflect all aspects of their life, from income to survival to engaging in the society. Everything depends on fishing being a way of life. People talk about.
You have another minute.
Okay, I'll wind up. And then people talk about local knowledge or the knowledge of the fishers and its links with vulnerability and viability. Fisheries being, as a commons or collective action where people together act to engage in the fisheries. Of course, at the bottom of it is the struggle for survival, the fishing as a social struggle or fishing as a movement or resistance, because there are so many adversities. So if you can see in this particular slide, if we are losing out on each of these elements, then the small scale fishing communities become vulnerable. Is there a way to then improve and strengthen in each of these areas, restoring identity, making these, struggles for power really successful, and all other aspects that have been identified on these slides can then help to transition small-scale fisheries from a vulnerability situation to viable situations. Just the last slide before I end is we need to look at vulnerability and viability in the context of a change. There's massive change that is taking place, change that are systemic in nature, but change that are sudden and abrupt in nature. You can take COVID as an example of a driver, that is causing innumerable amounts of change that was unexpected just a few months back. So we're looking at a different kind of change, and we need to then talk about vulnerability and the transition from vulnerability to viability in small-scale fisheries, in the context of these abrupt, long-term, and significant changes, where the speed and intensity and the frequency of these changes and their impact has severely changed. So we need new strategies. We need new kind of collaboration at all levels to make this possible. In terms of how small-scale fisheries can move from a vulnerable situation to viable situation. I will invite you to visit the V2B or Vulnerability to Viability Global Partnership website at www.v2bglobalpartnership.org if you need more information. But now I'm looking forward to your questions at the end of these presentations to engage more and answer some of your questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Prateep.
Yeah. Thank you, Prateep, for this engaging interventions on the paths towards from vulnerability to viability. I think this will generate a lot of interest among these practitioners as well as the academic communities. I will now request Dr. Vasant Kumar Das, is the Director Safety, and Dr. Das, everybody knows he's an eminent scientist. He has more than 370 scientific papers to his credit. So I would request Dr. Das to take over this space.
Okay, I will share, or you people will share the presentation? Who will share?
Anna,
Sure, yes.
Anna, please share.
I will share the screen just a second.
Okay, I think it is well organized, and thanks for the giving the opportunities for these things. I will give a brief overview of the topic assigned to me, congregating the different aspects that CIFRI is doing for past 5-6 years, focusing the different areas. As you know, India 95% is small-scale fisheries. Maybe you go for some of the eastern India where you backward pond with a small pond, people go on stocking and harvesting. These starting from that, a lot of resources, all of you know, from reservoirs to other things, everything is work under the things of the small scale fisheries. And what way we are working on this for the capacity building and other things that I will tell, because you have given the nutritional perspectives and dried fish of India. Though dried fish, many of the start work with the Derek's project, but we have not much gone ahead. But we are in the winter fishing in the Sundarban areas. We have documented these type of things for the small scale fisheries. So I think, is it coming or presentation?
Yeah, can you see the screen?
No, it's come again. It has gone somewhere. It's gone to the chat box somewhere. It is focusing. Other people are able to see.
And if you stop sharing this screen, I can.
Okay.
Can I share?
Okay.
Yeah, now it's coming.
Get the full screen. So go next slide, please. And
sure.
If you look into the things, I have given a brief of the things, means world inland fisheries sketch in the developing countries. If you should look into the 95% contribute. Again, 97% of the small scale fisheries located in developing countries. And all of you know, a lot of people dependent on this for their livelihood or food security or the nutrition or for social protection and safety for this. So this is a huge algorithm or complex weaving takes place in these cases. Again, it's for goes most of the thing just like our hidden harvest, it go for the local consumptions direct. We have seen we have surveyed maybe more than 20 wetlands. Whatever the small scale activities, it goes to the direct consumption, small scale. Again, if you see SIFs goes to the direct consumption because the big size go for the market and SIFs goes to the small consumption. Again, if you see, most of them are full-time or part-time fish workers and their income is very low. And 50% are women and it's a small environmental footprint it creates. Then if we go to this and how it is the opportunities, what is the opportunities if we'll see. So you have to reduce the harmful effect of fish and it is a rebuild the depleted fisheries. If you can work upon that, like your viability conditions comes here, and it also cater more be 5-6 SDG goals. And if fishery subsidies, other things what we are going, government is promoting, we can reduce it. Again, if we'll see there is a management and conservation will take place, lot of biodiversity come into the domain. So self recruitment is one of the aspects that can be addressed. Again, if we'll see strengthen the implementation of the climate change, because all of you know, but this act as a climate sink. If we'll see the carbon sink, and this lot of wetlands and reservoirs, the act. Again, you will see we have to take a focus to engine for the food security, nutrition and livelihood of the people. And some of the things we work on the enclosure culture on for build up the stocks in the environment. Whether we go for the stocking into the nearby pond systems or the wetlands or in the in situ rearing capacity, that will lead to the betterment and healthy conditions of the system. Next. Then we work on, like if you see, both I told these are the some aspect we go when if you see it's 5% to 30% from commercial fishers to amateur fishing. We have calculated, taken the study, and if you see this amount, if you go to the food basket of the rural foods that contribute huge in a country like India, which makes them more, if you see the nutritionally that are healthy index, and if this reach in micronutrients and will be increasing, they're reducing the risk due to diseases. Next. Then we work, I told we work in different systems. If you see small scale fishery in the river, recent last 4 years, if you see, we have taken 4 or 5 rivers in these systems, if you see, and we have seen that small scale fishery with low catch per unit efforts. Then multi-mesh gear fisheries from gill nets, in nets, barrier nets, hooks and line and traps. We calculate in the stretch wise the different sampling stations. Again, if you see, they are the breeding ground of the most freshwater, source of spawn and brooders for aquaculture, and which acts as a subsistence fishery, if you see, and these are in a decline and depleted stage. Conservation, restoration is one of the aspects. So we identify some of the breeding grounds, sensitizing the local fishers to protect these things, giving these systems to the government to build up the work upon that, and where a good governance and good management is nearer, because if you see, look into the fishermen potentials, they are very poor, and therefore these are abiding certain regulations is very difficult. Again, next, again, if you see, we have worked in a Ganga river systems. This is a river Naipal project here. If you see, the river fishing computed through means this much. If you see 115 lakhs fishermen, then this much Ganga can contribute this much. If you look into the fishermen account the census of the center of which is focused. Again, if we have calculated the stretch, lower stretch, middle stretch, and upper stretch. So lower stretch income is around 7,000 rupees, middle stretch around 9,000 rupees, and upper stretch is around 4,000 rupees. So this is the river Ganga only gives that very how much it is very less. We compare to this the analysis, it is very difficult to earn their livelihood this much incomes. Again, we have a Kaveri and Tapti rivers. If you see, catch per unit efforts, if you see per kilometers, we have find what is the productions. If you go 1.2 to 1.4 tons per kilometers and 1 to 1 kilometers respectively in 17 to 20. So it's a very low. If you see again if you monthly income little higher in Kaveri, that is 10,500, and Tapti is 5,500. Siang is again same 5,000. Chaler in Kerala is 11,000. This may be country villages because of very few days and certain pockets the fishes are available and they go for fishing. Then average monthly involvement of the fisheries in Kaveri River may be 8 days they involve. Tapti is only 6.5 days. Siang is 4.5. Chaler. Then this creates a what if you see labor migrations, secondary occupations, all these things because the availability of fish is very less for their fishing activities. Next. So if you look into this system, and I have given some of the fishing in the Hooghly Matla estuaries, and which comes a small juveniles, this much juveniles, we have estimated the shrimp juvenile fisheries, what is the loss is 32 crores rupees per annum it gives to the contribution. And if you see other priced fish like Torsa, Hilse, Topse, and these also being caught in the juvenile. So juvenile fishing through bag net is a risk, maybe a vulnerability conditions appear here. Next. Then these are the prawn seed collection. I told massive destruction of fish larvae juveniles, which is catching and which is this means the loss is around 32 crores. The type of capturing the systems and sorting, where the women people are also involved. So which has a loss to the recruitments and growing into the estuarine conditions. Next. Then wetland, again we study some of the wetland fisheries. I am giving that if you see again wetland, you know the life jacket of all fish breeding and seed rearing facilities, and yield potential is 1,500 to 2,500 kg. Average yield has increased with our intervention from 50 kg to 400 kg with adoption of the culture based method, but wide scope of again achieving to 1,500 kg. So a lot of gap is around 1,100 kg gap in Indian content. Again, a lot of fish diversity you will find comes for the breeding purpose. Again, we have, I told the present is 400. You can potential lead is 1,500, 2,000. So, but gap is 1,600, and these are the four things I told you. Full see there is a provisioning required, then cultural aspect, then regulating and supporting aspects, which is I told initially are nutrient recycling, carbon sequestrations, and again if a regulator are basically climate regulations, hydrological flow, pollution controls, and detoxification, habit and natural hazards. If you look into these things and looking into their cultural aspect, recreational aesthetics, we can definitely there is a scope for the improvement, achieving the target of the as mentioned. Next.
Sir, you have 2 more minutes to wrap up.
Just you can quickly, because my is delayed because you are sharing. So there I could have finished by that time because your sharing is too late. So you can share when I am tracking means you should change this slide. So India is this much again reservoir is a potential source which is about 1/3 of the production, immense source of the diversification. People see small, medium, large rivers. What is the productivity now I have given here? Potential and gap is again huge, which requires again for involvement. Next. Then we have ICR Sifri have a different attempt you have taken based on these things, which is can be seen, which can scroll very quickly. I can speak. Next, please. Hello. Please. So these are the next. So these are the sustainable goals we are addressed in the different sense and the different project mode. Next. Then you see these are the interactions working with the people, talking and working together for enhancement of the wetland fisheries with the meeting and see the productions in the, with the end of poverty involving the community. Next. Then again economic doubling the farmers' incomes, reducing and how they will be coming in a community participation, cage cultures or pen culture, enclosure cultures. Next.
Sorry, Dr. Das, I have to ask you to conclude your presentation.
Okay,
a few more sentences. Thank you.
Okay.
Dr. Das, please take some time to conclude, 1 or 2 minutes. 2 minutes.
No, because sharing is a problem. I could have shared.
Yeah, Dr. Das, I
I
understand.
always share myself and control my time. If somebody shares, it should be that way tuned. Again, you have leave some of the things like if you look into the fish, different fishes, that is your nutrition. We have done the around 100 food fishes nutrient profile, which is the main aspect of the topic. And you'll see in the later part of these things, we have done how the Nutri-Smart species, which is amino acid rich, protein rich, micronutrients, calcium, phosphorus, vitamins, that will add to this. And we have seen most of the people residing in the wetlands, they do not have the less visit to the hospitals. It indicates small scale fisheries and small indigenous fish as a greater scope for the nutrient availability and reducing the human risk due to disease. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Das. It was always great listening to you. I understand the technical glitch we have. Sorry for that, but it's always amazing to listening to you. The body of work SIFRI is engaged, and the kind of nutritional interventions SIFRI has been doing over the years. It would be really, and it is an asset for V2B as well as DFM networks we are involved in. We'll continue working with you, Dr. Das, and we'll keep learning from you. So now, thank you very much. Now I will request Ratona, as I introduced her in the beginning of the session. She doesn't require any introduction. She is one of the most distinguished scholar in fisheries and I think is a very, very well-known name across the world, whoever works on the fishery sector. So Professor Ratna, I'll just invite you to take on the floor.
Thank you very much, CC, and to the V2V partnership for the invitation to participate in this webinar. I'm just gonna share with you some of the perspectives that I like to bring to the conversation as we're talking about going from vulnerability to viability. So I'm not gonna use any slides, and I was hoping that there will be some introductory slide that you can put on the screen if you'd like, but otherwise we're just gonna chat with each other. But I thank Dr. Das for covering the different aspects that you're doing with your research, covering especially the various sustainable development goals. And I think that's where I like to begin. We know that, we have been looking at sustainable development goals for some time now. And starting 2021, of course, there's going to be then the United Nations Ocean Decade, right? The decade of ocean science. I think that's officially the name. So there's a lot of interest, a lot of opportunities to be able to do many things, but that would require change, the kind of change that Prateep mentioned earlier as well, starting from the changes that we would need to recognize in terms of environmental climatic change, but and then change that affecting the society and the economy and how we would organize communities and etc. But the kind of change that has to go along with, if we want to achieve all those SDG goals, if we wanted to really do better with ocean and fishery sustainability, whether that's ocean or inland fisheries, we would need to see change also in the way we think about policy and governance. So since 2014, we have endorsed the small-scale fisheries guidelines. So, India is a major player in endorsing and adopting and developing the small-scale fisheries guidelines. And you know that the small-scale fisheries guidelines are really based on human rights-based approach. it invites us to think about many other principles that are very comprehensive and holistic. Well, focusing a lot on making sure that the rights, especially the tenure rights of small-scale fisheries, are secured, that they have access to resource and markets, and that is what SDG 14 Target B is about. So there are many interests also in looking at small-scale fisheries in terms of gender equity, gender equality. It is also about developing good social work and condition, and also work environment and health and safety issue. It is a lot to do with providing opportunity for small-scale fishing organizations to participate in governance. It doesn't happen just on its own, of course. It would require that governments and other key governing actors get together and think about what will be required in order to implement the small-scale fisheries guidelines, given that they are voluntary. So when things are not mandatory, the countries don't need to do them. But if they are voluntary, it doesn't mean that countries would be let off the hook, so to speak, if they don't do them. So FAO, for instance, has now requesting member states to start reporting on what they are doing to implement the small-scale fisheries guidelines. And that is reported to the COFI, the Committee on Fisheries, when they meet every other year in Rome. So countries are encouraged to do it, but countries actually are facing a lot of challenges in figuring out how to go about implementing the small-scale fisheries guidelines. So I'd like to just bring a few of the ideas and the learning and the lessons that we have when we have done the research in thinking, in assessing globally the challenges and the limitations that countries have. And perhaps we can get a little bit of conversation with, learning also from India in terms of what you have been doing. So a couple of things that we need to keep in mind is that the same thing that we see change happening in other spheres, we also been seeing a bit of transition and reform that is happening around the world when it comes to governance. So we're talking about moving, in some cases, from a hierarchical system, top-down governance system, into more participatory. And in some case, it's also involving a lot of decentralization and self-governance system. But the majority of the countries that we have assessed in 34 case studies around the world that we did within the Too Big to Ignore project that I am involved in. This is the work that I work with Professor Sven Jentoft and many others. This assessment of using the interactive governance framework really reveals that the majority of the countries are in that transition, moving towards much more participation, much more participatory governance system, which is a really good news because, like I said, small-scale fisheries guidelines cannot be implemented from a top-down perspective. It really requires a lot of participation from many actors to really move it along. So one thing is about increasing participation, enhancing that involvement and engagement with various stakeholders and actors that we see very well. Aligning with that, of course, is about the way governments are implementing various rules and regulations and other institutions to help moving along the governance system. Here is a little bit tricky, simply because when you started to align principles within the small-scale fisheries guidelines and the principles underlying the rules and regulations that countries are using in the way they manage the fisheries, now we start to see a little bit of disconnect, if you like. because the rules and regulations that countries are using to implement the guidelines are usually put there to control or to either the effort or the input control or the output control in the fisheries. So there are not enough rules and regulations that would be putting in the system to enable small-scale fisheries to secure rights, to be able to get access to resources, to be able to participate fully in the fisheries in a meaningful way, so that they have their own control of the fisheries. So that is where we see a little bit of disconnect. And it could begin perhaps from the way we define small-scale fisheries, because countries put in definition of small-scale fisheries in a way that can help them manage and regulate the small-scale fisheries in the most straightforward way. And the definition of small-scale fisheries don't always include the whole characteristics of small-scale fisheries. And therefore, it doesn't enable small-scale fisheries to be able to fully engage in small-scale fisheries and again have access to resources or secure access to resources. So a lot of consideration would need to take place in order to see how we can secure better access to resource. So I think that is, two main observations that I like to make, and I'm going to wrap up with saying that there is a little bit of work to be done on aligning better the legal framework and the policy framework within the country so that it can correspond well with the principles in the small-scale fisheries guidelines. And I want to just draw attention to one thing in particular, which is related to social justice. And that is a major, major consideration. And I think these would be fundamental when we're talking about going from vulnerability to viability. So we need to be able to provide very good and just policy and institution in order to help small-scale fisheries transition towards viability. So why don't I stop there? And I think my time is up anyway. So thank you very much for your attention, and I look forward to further discussion about this.
Thanks a lot, Ratana, for actually agreeing to come with a very short notice and really share your platform with us. It's always a pleasure to listen to you, always. So definitely, I know there are many people are listening, and policymakers as well as the ministry people, everyone is there. So they will hit to your kind of two pathways you are presenting. Thank you, Ratana, for being with us for this occasion of this webinar. So now I'll request Professor Priyadasi to take over. And Professor Priyadasi is a professor in IIT, as I discussed, and he is also heading the Reiki Center for Happiness. So I will request him to take over.
Thank you very much, Sisir. Can you hear me?
Yes. Yes.
And are you able to see the screen? The screen that I have shared?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. My apologies because of a eye infection. I have to wear these odd-looking glasses. And I would start with a disclaimer that if I say that I know much about this particular field of small-scale fisheries, then probably I would be doing a great injustice. However, in some of the projects, I have been exposed to fishing communities, and my focus in this very short talk is going to be on certain things related to well-being and a couple of insights that probably I would like to share. The rest of the things probably are well known to everyone here. So for people who are not familiar with the concept of well-being or a field of happiness, it's a new thing which has emerged since the late 1990s and has gradually emerged in the last 25-30 years as a very significant field. When we are looking at the fields of sociology, anthropology, and related areas, we have concepts about well-being, as in the context of case of the theory of McGregor and Sarah White. When we are talking about psychological components, we have concept of PERMA by Martin Seligman, or we have the subjective well-being concepts. We also have different ways of administering it in different contexts. For instance, the gross national happiness concept, which has been primarily used by Bhutan and is gradually being used in other places as well, looks at certain dimensions of well-being. So the reason for just starting with this is to share that one can think in terms of that which gives a sense of satisfaction over a long period of time. These could be material things. This could also be things which are related to our mind. So we could be materially well off, but unhappy mentally. We could be mentally well off, but materially in a poor situation. We could have a balance between the two. There could be also relationship between the two, in the sense that if I'm materially doing well, probably I'm also going to do emotionally, mentally well, and the vice versa. Could be. So these are the areas which are explored. What I'm trying to start off with are some very basic components. I'm trying to refer to a recent report by Sarah White and friends, where they've explored rural India, especially the poor community and the concept of well-being. And the reason for taking it up is because it is relevant to the context of the rural poor and to the poor who are in the periphery of the society. And it is also relevant for the fishing communities. So although I take a generic take right at the beginning, taking a larger community, probably some of the points made here would be relevant for fishing communities as well. So when we are looking at where well-being is to be found, we might look at economic resources, agencies and participation, I mean, in terms of how somebody is doing in one's personal life, social connectivities, close relationships, mental health, and the kinds of values and meanings one derives from one's life. There can be mediators which influence these, like economic status could influence not only material well-being, as well as it could also influence inner well-being. You could have gender and marital status. For instance, we find that single women are generally relatively less happy than women who are married in poorer communities. And for instance, single women have a stronger reliance on community network rather than at a personal level. It is found that villages and village life and community life has its significance and relevance in the context of inner well-being. And when it comes to what are the components which enhance well-being in these communities and in these contexts, some of these happen to be the small rights which have been promised to them by the governments and the policymakers. Food security, which is very significant, even when their ability to produce is something which is compromised. When they get the rice and ration, there is a great degree of sense of security. The policies and interventions by the governments, and of course the NGOs which intervene, and in most cases in a very positive way. Now, friends, what I would like to say is that if you're looking at the background, that these are some of the well-being indicators, these are some of the well-being mediators, these are the factors which affect well-being. Or if you're looking at what helps or hinders well-being, then based on my experience, my field visits mostly in coastal Orissa and very few places in Bengal, we find that, excuse me, we find that in the context of economic components, we have issues like environmental disaster, COVID, which are creating significant problems, especially in the context of well-being. And for fisheries as well, because you see that with the issue of contact, with the issue of touch, and sanitization of goods, their well-being is significantly affected. Governance and policy need not be highlighted. Community is a very, very significant aspect where formal and informal organizations and relationships keep on playing a significant role, as we have found in various contexts, as along with our field studies. And of course, the concept of identity. The concept of current identity, migration, and the identities which keep on changing. We will talk about that a little elaborately a little later. And locational identity, like fishing rights and other related areas. However, what I would like to focus on in this very brief talk would be just a couple of things which I find interesting and probably which would be of some interest to many of the people here who know most of the other things. One of the important things is that economic change and change in well-being drivers, cultural change, aspirations, drivers, conflict, and identity. So the fundamental thing I would like to say is that we find that we are in the middle of a societal flux, a change, and these changes affect the identities of the people. And when these affect the identities of the people, their orientations, their perceptions about themselves and things, that also significantly affects their well-being. And this significantly is to be found in many of the fishing communities in near Chilka that we had visited. I'll give you a small example. When we are talking about social comparison, there is a story in the Bhagavad Puran, which talks about a person getting a boon from Lord Vishnu that he can wish for anything and he will get it, but the condition is that his neighbor will get double the amount. And in spite of being happy that if he asks for a pot of gold, he will get it, he's unhappy that when he asks for a pot of gold without working for it, his neighbor gets 2 pots of gold. His unhappiness reaches the zenith because he has 1 grandson, his neighbor has 2 grandsons, until one day he decides that he would wish that he loses one of his eyes. And then, of course, you know that the other person loses both his eyes. So
Excuse me,
here
Professor,
is one. Yes.
You have 2 more minutes.
Thank you very much. So this is the aspect of social comparison. And a more recent phenomena is where conspicuous consumption is playing a significant role in the perception of well-being, which is that people would give up taking decent food and buy a mobile instead. And this is where you see that identity politics comes in a significant way, because you see that people are interested in trying to display their prestige, their social status, and they feel that when they do these things, they are probably better off in society, and they compromise on other things, and this leads to various kinds of ill-being in these particular contexts. The reason for bringing in these examples is to tell that if when we visited the Chilka Lagoon, we found that many of the fishing communities were undergoing these kinds of transformations, where these changes were taking place, and the concept of well-being or ill-being was getting modified by such changes and fluxes which were taking place. So the reason for bringing it in is to realize that in different corners of these fishing communities, this identity crisis are changing identities. Younger generation not being willing to stay with the old identities. These are some of the fundamental issues that are coming up. There is just a couple of points I would make at the end because of shortage of time. One is that probably if we are looking at possible ways and positive interventions, policies need to be identity sensitive. I remember the last time we visited, we were told that the government is now trying to give goats to the fishermen so that their lifestyle, their sustainability is based on goats and hens and doing business with them. So here you find that this policy is not identity sensitive. Probably we need identity sensitive policies from the government. That is something very often missing. The other thing which is an internal driver, which probably we can fall back on, is the sense of community wisdom. The other things are well known to all of us. But this community wisdom is something which is not getting preserved, which is a part of our oral tradition, a part of the community oral culture, and probably there must be strategies to see that these are also put in place. The other drivers, external and internal, are well known to all of us. And I felt that these 3 points which I made, one about the flux, the changing, the transforming communities, the concept of, identity sensitive policies, and community wisdom could be 3 interesting concepts which could be brought into the discussion. Thank you very much. So Cicera, can you hear me?
Yeah, thank you very much, Professor Sivai, for in spite of your health challenges and everything, you made it. It shows your commitment and kind of passions towards this issue. Thank you very much. So for actually sparing time against all of your health issues. So thank you. I now invite Professor Derek Johnson, for his talk. Professor Johnson, as I introduced in the beginning, is a very, very engaging student, and he is also one of my biggest mentor. And he has been working relentlessly on the issues of fisheries, small-scale fisheries, most particularly dried fish, and has a stronghold in India and South Asian perspective. So I'll request you to take the floor, Derek.
Thank you for the very kind introduction, Cecile. I'm also going to share my screen and show a few slides. Are they now visible?
Yes, Derek.
Okay. So thank you, Prateep and the V2V partnership for this opportunity to present an overview of our work in the Dried Fish Matters project, on which I'm the project director. I'd like to begin by linking my presentation to the title of the webinar in the following way. So in the context of the viability of small-scale fisheries and fisheries value chains, where does dried fish fit in terms of opportunities and challenges? I want to briefly address this question in relationship to the Dried Fish Matters project, or the DFM project, as I'll call it from now on. DFM includes participation by several members of this panel, and so I'm really happy to be on the panel with all of you. In broad terms, as a product, dried fish has enormous value in terms of food and nutrition security, livelihoods, cultural meanings, and in other ways as well. But dried fish value chains also have significant challenges, and these include problematic labor conditions, product quality concerns, contamination, competition from other economic uses and actors that threaten the long-term viability of these dried fish value chains. So in this presentation, I'll summarize the social economy approach that the Dried Fish Matters project is taking to the opportunities and challenges of dried fish value chains in South and Southeast Asia. And then I'm going to give you some very brief illustrations of the kinds of insights that the project is generating with reference to just 2 segments of dried fish value chains in the overall region. But first of all, let me tell you a little bit more about the Dried Fish Matters project and the approach of the project to studying dried fish value chains. Okay, so the Dried Fish Matters project then is funded by the Social Science and Humanities Research Council of Canada and under the Partnerships Grant Program. This is the same funding envelope that is funding the V2V partnership. So the Dried Fish Matters program or project is looking at dried fish value chains in 6 countries across South and Southeast Asia. And it's a 7-year-long project. So we've got a generous amount of time to be understanding dried fish value chains in the region. And I should point out, within India, we have 8 different state research locations. So India is quite well covered by the project. And in recent months, we've also extended our research to the Philippines, where we now have a master's student conducting some research there. So that's why I have 6+ countries listed on the slide here.
This, at the top of this slide, we've got the full title of the Dried Fish Matters project. So the remainder of the title is Mapping the Social Economy of Dried Fish in South and Southeast Asia for Enhanced Well-Being and Nutrition. And so you can see that there are links to several of the other speakers through this expanded title. So in relation directly to Priyadarshi's talk and to Derek's talk earlier, well-being is a central conceptual element of the project. In very broad terms, this longer title encompasses two major areas of interest for the project. So this is a research-driven project. So that's one key area. We're aiming to generate knowledge about dried fish value chains around South and Southeast Asia in a way that hasn't previously been done. But more than that, we are intending that this knowledge generation that the project is producing will also lead to ideas about development interventions in the dried fish sector across the region. The project rests on the idea of social economy. So I'll just say a couple of words about what we mean by that. So social economy is the idea that economic relationships are embedded in broader social, cultural, political, ecological conditions. So it's taking economy and turning it into a more interdisciplinary frame for analysis. And within the project, we're particularly interested in the idea of values. And so we take a value chain perspective, but we focus on this notion of value in value chains, and we expand that idea from just narrow ideas of economic value creation to understanding how value creation relates to these broader contextual conditions that are captured by the social economy idea. So how is it that cultural contexts or ecological conditions create certain constraints to or opportunities for value realization? Okay, so it's an expanded understanding of value chains and value chain analysis that we're arguing for in this project. And the project as a whole also is particularly interested in small scale actors who are involved in value chains. And so, we build on the ideas of Ratana's Too Big to Ignore project in this regard in particular. So we're interested in how small scale actors across the value chain are able to realize value through their engagements in value chains. And we pay particular attention to the diversities in interests and well-being aspirations that exist within those value chains and are held by these different value chain actors. Dried Fish Matters has a large, broad understanding of what dried fish is. Our basic definition of dried fish is that dried fish are any fish product that can be stored at room temperature that does not involve high levels of industrial packaging. So we exclude canned fish from our category, but we include categories of fish products that might not normally be considered as dried fish. So for example, the bottom left here, we have an image of a jar of fermented fish in Bangladesh. On the bottom right, we've got a gentleman holding a set of fish sauce bottles. So both of those fall under our definition of dried fish because they are storable at room temperature. They don't require high levels of industrial packaging. And we also include all of the more traditionally understood varieties of dried fish, like the ones you see across the top there in various country contexts, Sri Lanka, India, and then in the middle, the bottom there in Cambodia. So why is dried fish important? Why does this topic merit the focus of a large research project? Well, there are a number of key features of dried fish that are really critical to the importance of this product. So number one, dried fish are portable and they last a long time. They are a mode of preparing fish that allows us to overcome the limitations of fresh fish. Fresh fish obviously spoil very quickly. When you dry fish, however, that problem is overcome. Dried fish are easily divisible into small portions. so they can be sold for low cost and therefore complement the diet of low-income populations. So that's the third point. They are readily accessible to poor populations because of this portability, because of the fact that they're long-lasting, because of the fact that they are small and they're easily divided into small portion size. And perhaps most importantly, dried fish are critical to nutrition security in South and Southeast Asia because small portions of dried fish, and we're talking a tablespoon of dried fish, can satisfy the nutritional requirements of a child for a day. So you do not need very much of this product in order to achieve very important nutritional outcomes. And let's also not forget that dried fish are important because they have deep, deep histories of use in South and Southeast Asia, and they are integrated into many of the cuisines of the region. So in that sense, they are highly culturally important to people, to consumers in South and Southeast
Excuse me,
Asia.
Terry.
Yes.
1 more minute.
Okay, thank you. At the same time, however, dried fish are an unfortunately neglected area of research, and that's what this project is trying to address. And so I'm nearly out of time, and I'm almost done at the same time. I wanted to try and draw all of this work by the Dried Fish Matters project together with some of the key themes of the V2V partnership, and particularly around this area of opportunities and challenges. And so I'll move past this slide and go to these two specific examples. One of the key challenges in the dried fish sector is competition from more industrially oriented forms of production and trade. And here, this image captures bycatch from bagnet fishing in Bangladesh. This fish, as was mentioned by Dr. Das, is fish that otherwise could be used for direct human consumption, but it's instead going for fish meal production. And so is being fed into aquaculture and poultry supply chains. This is problematic from the point of view of the nutritional potential of dried fish. And so there's a challenge here, and particularly because this fish meal production sector is growing rapidly in India and other places in South and Southeast Asia. How can we transform this fishery and the diversion of this fish into fish for human consumption and realize those nutritional possibilities of this fish? We have to try and find ways of seizing that opportunity and diverting the challenge of the rise of the fish meal industry. Another example is changes in dried fish markets, dried fish trading, a shift towards organic, an interest in organic consumption in Bangladesh, and even more recently within the COVID pandemic, we're seeing a shift towards more and more online trading of dried fish. So similarly, there's an opportunity there. New market niches are opening there. New consumer preferences are being manifest there. But there are also significant challenges. Who is benefiting from these changes in dried fish value chains? That's one of the key questions that our project can seek to address. Okay, so in conclusion then, like small-scale fisheries, the dried fish sector is an undervalued economic sector. It deserves more policy and governance attention. And we think that the social economy perspective gives insight into the diverse and complex opportunities and challenges towards the dried fish sector's viability, and specifically viability for the small-scale actors in these dried fish value chains. And if this presentation has piqued your curiosity, you can go to driedfishmatters.org and get more information on the project and what we're up to. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Derek. Thank you, Derek. It's always a pleasure listening to you. I think these issues you are raising, we are now observing also on the ground about the competition, about the markets, about especially in the COVID context. The situation is becoming very, very complex for the small-scale processors as well as the fishers. So it's really timely to raise this kind of issues and raise dried fish as an issue in the policy making as well as the programmatic thing. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for raising this. Now I hand over to Professor Jenia Mukherjee. As I also introduced her in the beginning, Professor Jenia is a very young, bright mind working on issues of political ecology, ecosystems, and ecosystem challenges, putting poor and people's rights at the center. So I would invite Professor Mukherjee to speak on your experience with Calcutta Wetlands and discuss the important issues.
Yes, thank you. Thanks a lot, Shri Sister. And before I start, I would like to acknowledge, this entire team, Pradeep sir, from Pradeep sir to Derek Johnson, Derek, Armitej, Ratana, all of them, who are continuously, enlightening us with all these very important, vignettes and components that are involved or that play a major role in the functioning of small-scale fisheries. So initially, I was not at all involved in small-scale fisheries because my work, it looked into the intersections between city nature and technology. But now I think with this governance paradigm and so many other transdisciplinary paradigms that we are being exposed to through both these DFM and the V2V projects. So I think it has been quite an experience, and we have to keep learning a lot. So with this, I would just quickly share my screen. On today's presentation. And so I think the screen is visible, right?
Yes, we can see the screen.
All right, thanks. So, so I wanted to touch base on this wastewater fisheries in the East Kolkata wetlands, and the site, I think it's itself very fascinating, because if you see this map, this green boundary, it is the boundary for the city of Kolkata. So the wards comprising the Kolkata Municipal Corporation, and this red boundary, it is so these are the wetlands. So these are designated as East Kolkata wetlands, comprising 254 sewage-fed fisheries, which are also known as bheris in the local Bengali dialect. And if you see this particular map, so these wetlands that I'm talking about, these are here. So this map is very significant because it help us to kind of situate East Kolkata wetlands within the shared geomorphological basin. So within the larger context of the deltaic estuarine Sundarbans region. So what is very important for us is also this map to an extent kind of enable us to understand, that East Kolkata wetlands is also an outcome of, the natural ecology, but also natural ecology being tamed and manipulated by series of hydraulic interventions, which were crafted by the colonizers, the British colonizers, who were engaged in this laudable project of colonial urbanization in the city of Kolkata. So again, I think that this East Kolkata wetlands, East Kolkata wetlands is a major example. It's a very good example to kind of demonstrate urban metabolism or sustainable flows between a core city and its wider ecological infrastructures or ecological settings in the form of wetlands, boglands, marshes, farmlands, pastures, etc. So we can see here how the Kolkata city and the peri-urban, the East Kolkata wetland and peri-urban interface, they are extremely, they are mutually interconnected to each other. So, for example, the backbone of SSF, the small-scale fisheries in East Kolkata wetlands, is the wastewater, and this wastewater is supplied to these wetlands from the city of Kolkata. So Kolkata till date, I mean the population of Kolkata is like more than 15 million, and that also as per the census 2011. So our latest census will come out next year. But Kolkata it's an extremely populous city, and till date it has no separate sewage treatment plant. So every day it generates like 750 million liters of waste, which is recycled in this East Kolkata wetlands through local nature-based wise use of recovery practices. So this is a very good example, and it's a win-win situation, because like this East Kolkata wetlands recycles 750 million liters of waste per day and generates 22 tons of fish per day. So this is this table, I mean, you can see the names of some fish species or fish varieties which are produced in this East Kolkata wetlands. Now, the major vulnerability or the major challenge that these wetlands are facing in the contemporary times, it again needs to be historically and economically contextualized within the larger processes of planetary urbanization. So what is happening is that the consumer cities, the consumption cities, these are expanding their contours. Kolkata is not an exception, by swallowing and gobbling up, the wetlands and farmlands, etc. So the same fate has been thrust upon the East Kolkata wetlands. In the last at least 5 decades. Wetlands are getting converted into real estate, and the corporate lobbies, they are very much involved in this scene in alliance with the state. So this is the major vulnerabilities that this East Kolkata wetlands is making way to land, to concrete land. So in my book, very quickly, I would like to talk about this particular methodology which I formulated and I found quite useful for understanding, the nitty-gritties of small-scale fisheries in EKW. So what I did was that I kind of converged the two urban environmental social sciences framework. So urban environmental history on one hand and urban political ecology on the other. So while history provided temporal scales, a long-term temporal scale to political ecology enabled me to kind of explore in detail the mediations across various social actors, across multiple stakeholders who are involved in the story of supply, distribution, and recycling of wastewater in this East Kolkata wetlands. So, so what I did was that I kind of complemented archive or archival research with ethnography. And I think that, UP is important. Why? Because if you see the mainstream or conventional projections, if you read the contemporary media reports, media mention that the two major challenges in this East Kolkata wetlands is one, which I already discussed, that how, these wetlands are falling prey to real estate speculation. And on the other hand, the media also talks about the recent crisis relating to the distribution of wastewater in these wetlands, and the media project that this is being deliberately done by the bureaucrats, so by the people who are who work for the irrigation and waterways department, because irrigation and waterways department is responsible for channelizing wastewater in these wetlands. So now very quickly I would discuss that why HUPE or historical urban political ecology is an important framework to help us kind of counter these so-called linear mainstream projections by going deep into the ground realities and complementing these ground realities with records, reports, gazetteers, correspondence, etc. that are actually available in different archives. So this is again a map. It is a colonial map. It's a technical map, and it speaks very well, about this intersection between city nature technology and, for example, the colonizers. They used this particular river called the Vidyadari river as the outfall channel for Kolkata. But when this river died, so it's a kind of a saline river because it was connected to the Bay of Bengal. So when this river declined and it was officially declared dead in 1928, so it was replaced by another distributary of the Ganga, so which is this Kulti Gang or the Kulti law. So, and this is very important in the ecological history of the city itself. Why? Because it brought a change, a major transformation in the ecological regime, of this particular space, because it led to the formation of the East Kolkata wetlands. So what happened is that, so there's a there's a big chunk of history, so far as this Kolkata's canal system and wetlands are concerned, and it's an integrated system altogether. So I don't have much time to discuss this, but what I would like to discuss is that when this cruelty outfall scheme was implemented in 1939, then, this East Kolkata wetlands here, almost like 20,000 hectares of land, where the locals, they started drawing wastewater from the main canal. So you can see the main canal, the dry with the flow channel, which actually carries the wastewater and finally disposes it in the Kulti river. So, but in between, what happens is that the local fishers, they have excavated small inlet canals. And so they take the wastewater from the dry weather flow channel and through these small inlet canals, and then these canals carry the water to the waste stabilization ponds. And in these waste stabilization ponds, the local fishers, they actually, through various stages, like for example, pond preparation, primary fertilization, fish stocking, secondary fertilization, fish harvesting. So through all these, stages, wastewater is recycled and piscicultural activities is pursued. So it's a fascinating win-win system. So where the city does not require any cost for this sewage treatment. On the other hand, it generates 22 tons of fish per day. On the other hand, it provides a livelihood to like almost 1.5 lakh people. Now, what is happening is that—
Excuse me, Professor Jane, you have a minute to wrap up.
All right. So, what I would finally like to, shed light upon is the very fact that, when I started talking to various people, like, for example, the municipal officials and engineers, the people based at the Irrigation and Waterways Department, KMC people, etc. So I could find out that, that the media projection about this conflict between the developmentalist vision of the state and the, local conservationist aspirations of the local fishers actually don't hold ground. Why? Because, so I mapped different stakeholders and actors who are involved in this story. And I also kind of, I could map, not only conflicts, but also collaborations, also overlapping interests among various stakeholders who play a major part in the in wastewater supply, distribution, and management. And I talked about that Kulti scheme of 1939, and people argue that East Kolkata wetlands is actually locally owned, locally managed. All right, and the state is trying to kind of snuff out fisheries for its own capitalist, corporate, neoliberal agendas. But that's not absolutely right, because these people they meet time and again. There are a number of good things which are going on. So, for example, there's this KEIP project. So Kolkata Environment Improvement Project, and under this ADB funded project, the inlet canals are being desilted. Number of other activities are taking place in collaboration with these various social actors. So there are definitely points of conflict. The vulnerability is there, but a lot of good things are also happening. So I think UP is a perspective so when we kind of complement history with political ecology and ethnography, I think we are able to draw a robust matrix which enable us to look into both the challenges and opportunities that are prevalent in wastewater or sewage-fed fisheries in the wetlands. So this is the final slide. So I think, HUP is an important methodology which enables us to understand the exchange flows across various sectors, actors, and networks. And I think it's very important to channelize these exchange flows by crafting a common language of conversation, not only to ensure sustainable flows between the city and its larger ecological settings, but also, to kind of ensure viability of small-scale fisheries in East Kolkata wetlands, because the protection of East Kolkata wetlands through the collaboration and through poor design and poor management of this particular space, which is being done historically, I think it can be an important or opportune method to find out key variables that can actually ensure viability of SSF in Ecuador. Yeah. Yes, so I'm done, I think.
Yeah, thank you very much, Genia, Professor Genia. So it was really interesting methodology, and in the context of this vulnerability to viability, the stakeholder participation and stakeholder interactions is critical, looking at the resource and resource base. Thank you very much for such a wonderful, motivated piece of work and presentations. Thank you. We now open up the session for discussion for about 10-15 minutes. So how to go about it? So you can actually send your queries in the chat box, or you can raise hands so that we can, our panelists are there, some of the panelists, they can take up the questions, whatever coming on the way. Thank you very much. Now, floor is open to all. Whoever wants to raise a question, either raise a hand or chat, put a chat.
Cici, there's a question already that is posted in the chat.
Yeah.
I'm not sure who's asking that, but I'm not sure whether anyone wants to answer that or not. It's a bit related to governance. Can I give it just a quick try just to get things going?
Please, please.
Yes, okay, because the question is related to when you see that, like trawlers that are, in this case, I assume it's mean illegal fishing, so unregulated. The question was saying that, so small scale fisheries, when they see that trawlers are perhaps fishing illegally or not well regulated, what do you do from the governance perspective? And then another related to that, it's about the lack of proper transportation or market, so from the governance perspective, how do you go about that? And I think the first question about either unregulated, illegal fishing, I mean, this is really a big one, right? It's part of that effort around the world to trying to eliminate IUU, illegal, unregulated, unreported fisheries. And trawlers are known to be one of the first sectors that we're trying to do better at management. But it's not easy because we always have this lack of capacity when it comes to monitoring, control, and surveillance. So there might not be enough Coast Guard boats or any kind of patrol vessels to trying to look into this. So I think we would need to really come up with a different way of approaching this, not only relying on government or the officers to do the controlling, but I think small-scale fishing boats really should have a better role, at least in reporting when they see, right, whether there is some violation or trawlers that should not be perhaps in the area where they should be trawling, and etc. So there should be mechanisms for small-scale fishing vessels, because there's a lot of vessels out there, to be able to do the reporting, at least to the officers. So that kind of mechanisms need to be in place. When it comes to better marketing or transportation, I think that would require a lot of organizations also from the communities, right, to organize the market, and also the, maybe through the cooperative system. That's the kind of potentials or opportunities that we can do. Thank you.
Yeah. Another question. Thanks, Ratana, for taking up. Another question from Mohammed Ruel. What is the biggest challenge in the value chain of small-scale fisheries? How would you improve from there? And what roles could have played by different actors in the value chains? So, anyone?
I can just quickly say, one crucial point with regards to that, and I hope Derek Johnson was there. So you would have addressed that properly. I think one of the biggest challenges of value chain is, the economic, classical economics definition that is always used. So in some of the work that we are doing, and Cecile would speak to that more maybe, is redefining this entire value chain, and in our work, we're finding that probably the resource node, which is not visible in the existing economic definitions of value chain, needs to be brought in. So it is mostly focused on the market, and then the upper other nodes, but not the resource node itself. So in some of the recent work, what is being done is bringing a social ecological systems perspective to say, how in the resource where the fish comes from can form the primary node of the value chain, and then how do you bring that into discussion is a critical point. So that has not been done, but some work is going on within the scope of the dried fish project, and we will pursue that in some of the research that we are doing in Eastern India through some of the PhD work. So that is one critical area, but there are many others that are there, but that's one critical area that we need to look at in terms of redefining the value chain and bringing all the nodes, possible nodes within the chain.
Derek has left because he has to take his kids to school. Yes. So if I could add something quickly on this, I think one of the attention areas is actually about the role of women in the value chain. There's so little recognition of that, and I think we need to be able to improve the values that you get from the fisheries, especially in terms of the wages for women, work condition, and everything. I think that is really a major point as well, just to add to what you said, Prateek.
Yeah, just to supplement both Prateek and Ratana on this issue. In fact, few days before, I was interacting with fishers and how they are actually working in this kind of conditions in the COVID, and a lot of fragmented supply chains, and especially people at small and tiny fishes. Those are dealing with dried fish as well as fish processing, and also their daily wage earners on the boat. Fishing sector ban is not there, but I think due to the mobility challenges, due to transport challenges, due to many other challenges, these people are falling as the first victims of this kind of uncertainties. So uncertainties and resource dynamics, these are the two major areas I think which needs to be really studied and needs to be incorporated as the key drivers for decision making in the value chain. However, the present decision making is mostly on profit points and about the market and market transactions. So we need to really look at, if at all, we have to put the poor fishers at the center of discussion, and they're the real missing people in the value chain at the moment in terms of decision making. And we need to make that visible through many means, as our minister told today also, like there has to be efforts how to connect this poor into this infrastructure, market players, decision making. You need state, you need academics, you need other players to come in and give that voice into the center of the value chain. Otherwise, the value chain in its own or its form itself is market oriented, and poor who are the like women, workers, and most of them are migrants. They don't have permanent settlements. Even they are also facing a lot of infrastructure challenges in terms since they are temporary settlements, not much development efforts goes on there, so they don't have hygiene and those issues. So these are typical issues in terms of missing people in the value chain. So that we need to really work on.
There is one more question. If I'm wondering if Dr. Das from SIFRI is still on the call. So the question is, how can we give better recognition to fisheries in inland areas, in rivers, which also supply dry fish to communities? If Dr. Das, are you?
Yeah. If you look in, Okay, if you look into the rivers, it contributes a lot. But in some places, if you look into the river stretch, and there is a Hogan Khali, if in the Kaveri River basin, they go for in dry fish and other things like small indigenous morala. It is a valued fish if you see the eastern India. The cost is very high, but you will find there it is 60 rupees. Go for dry. So interlinking, this is the supply chain and empowering the community, because many people do not know the price index of different parts of the country. So if you interlink all these things, again a raw fish can be sold in the different methods, and it can be when you go for the dry fish, again also if you see marinated fish is priced in, if you see in the northeastern part of the India, they require large number of, means like you have seen in our visit to Bhaja Ankovi. Anchovy, when it is marinated, is supplied to the northeast. Its price is gone up very high. So in that chain, if you look into this, some of the river aspect, those portions, those are dried small fish can be linked the supply chain to the northeast, or the riverine systems in the other part where the price is very high. So we can reduce the risk and benefiting the, again, and just like previously Ratna told about the empowering the women in the sector. If we see the illiteracy and education level of this society is very less, maybe some are illiterate and some are below 10th or 5 6 classes in the community sector. Again, the empowering and education is the one primary index also to see. Again, many people, when you link with the some of the chain of the IoT, ICT based communication, they could not understand. Again, that can be this recent based, the IoT based techniques or ICT based tools can be given the mobile SMS service, price, commodity, fluctuating market demands, that can be bring into the picture to reduce the risk for the river small scale fisheries. Thank you.
Yeah, there is question on island, Andaman overfishing, and how do we really focus on the resilience and what the way to control the social well-being approach there. Pradeep, Ratana, anyone can.
Yeah, I'll just take make a try. I'm not an expert on Andaman, but the question basically brings us to the point of how do you link resilience and well-being to overfishing, and overfishing is something that of course has direct impact on the levels of resilience and well-being. So it doesn't apply to Andaman, but applies to other fishing societies. In some of the specific context that I work in, how this is dealt is in multiple ways. At a community level, how people have historically dealt with overfishing is through rules at the community level itself. So fishing cooperatives would make rules and define when and how and where to fish and how much, and all those things used to exist. So what we are seeing in the recent days is that there is a large scale breakdown of those institutional norms and regulations at the community level. What is replacing those norms is policies. So there are policies on overfishing, but then people expect policy regulations to come in and control overfishing when it happens. So in the absence of community rules, people's expectation that policy people should come in and regulate this overfishing doesn't really work. So what I have always spoken about is can we revive some of those existing rules and institutional norms that used to work really well at the community level to deal with overfishing? And it works in many areas, and it works in many areas of small scale fisheries that I work in and other people also work in. But there is no black and white answer to that, how to. So people realize that when there is overfishing, the level of resilience, the capacity to respond to other challenges reduces. It is a discussion that is ongoing, and it is a discussion that goes from local institution to policy domain and also beyond. Limitation.
Yeah, there is another question about deep sea fishing, and trawler owners dive into large areas, thus marginal face policy dilemma, along with the operational crisis. What is the solution of policy of government of Odisha so far out of this? So I don't know whether the director of fisheries is there. SR Pradhan sir, is he there? So let me see. So
He's still here. See him?
yeah.
If he's not there,
Yeah, Pradhan
anybody
sir
would
is
like
there.
to take that up, this is a very specific question.
Yeah, is Arunji is here? Arun Padiyar. Arun Padiyar, are you there? Okay. Okay, I think he'll definitely come back. So as far as I know about policy in Orissa, since I'm working on this issue at the moment in Orissa, so let me take it. Yeah, this is a perpetual issue in Orissa, and it's a long-standing complaint for the basically marginal poor fishers. They're competing against these industrial fishing operations very soon, very much in deep sea areas and even shallow waters. And there are policies. There are policies about the use of net, about the areas, about the about this, and there are also policies about this fishing ban in certain period of time, trawler ban, everything. But in spite of that, there are a lot of issues happening in the state, and state is under Matsya Sampada Yojana. Now there are efforts to really bring in local volunteers, Sagar Mitras. Sagar Mitras will be working with the local communities, make their issues, and try to link these poor fishers into the market much better, and also deal with have the local communities and local, as minister has said today, promote farmers producers organizations around the fishing communities and having a say that really matters in the systems. So there are multiple ways programmatic directions is unfolding. At the same time, there are a lot of things to do. Professor Das, if you can, Dr. Das, if you can supplement to this. But this is mostly on the seascape. The question is on the seascape.
Marine Fisheries Act is well defined in Odisha. There is Javamphra Odisha Marine Fisheries Act, way back maybe 2010 or this act is there. If you look into the website of the Odisha state government, it is there, well placed and well regulated. They have like a trawler registrations and fishing vessels act, how the things will give. All trawlers have the licensing fee. Patrolling is there in Paradip, and there is a marine police stations are in place for the patrolling and other things. And they have a well-defined regulatory, even dugout canoes being registered. And this part again, you have like Gopalpur coast, Puri coast, the small-scale fishermen are going for the fishing, has been a definite signal systems of the different weather forecastings. So it's a well-placed and well-designed act for the, therefore they got this time the best awards from the Government of India on the World Fisheries Day. You have, I think, heard about when the director of fisheries told about these things. So this is in nutshell, because I do not deal, because I am being the president of Professional Fisheries Graduate and Odisha Fisheries College Alumni Associations. I keep a board of views of, will talk to their associations and other meetings. So this is the, in a nutshell, I supplement. If you go to the website, you will find detail about the OMFRA Act. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Das. Thank you very much. We should conclude now. So it's a wonderful session of about 3 hours. So now, thank you very much, all of the participants. Now I invite our colleague from COSIS, Dibakar Maharana sir, to give the vote of thanks. Dibakar Maharana.
Dear participants, today all of us heard the Honorable Minister and eminent speakers and experts like Sri S.R. Pradhan IAS, Director of Fisheries, Mr. Derek Amitabh, Mr. Prateep Kumar Naik, Dr. Basant Kumar Das, Ratna Chupadi, Professor Priyadarshi Patnaik, Professor Derek Johnson, and Professor Jenia Mukherjee. All of us have been benefited on this expert advice and discussions on scope, vulnerability, and challenges of small-scale fishery. I hope all have benefited from this virtual workshop. So, on behalf of COSIS, I extend a hearty vote of thanks to all the participants, experts, and Sri Sishu Kumar Pradhan, my colleague, ex-colleague, and moderator as organizer of the workshop. Thank you very much. And I also extend my vote of thanks to V2V and University of Waterloo as our partner for this workshop. Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Thank you once again. Okay. Bye.
Thank you again. Bye. Let's conclude. Bye. Bye, Ratana. Thanks. Thanks for that. Bye.